Hi, everybody. It's Dawn from Out of the Spiritual Closet with Dawn and the Akashic and the Angels coming to you today for another podcast. And for today, I wanted to talk about old souls. Are you an old soul? Do you know an old soul? What is an old soul? So, you may have heard the terminology old soul, and wondered what it meant. An old soul, to give you an analogy of it, is like a little kid that walks around with a grocery bag and her purse and, her coupons, right? She's a little old soul that, acts like a 60-year-old lady when she's four. A little old soul an old soul could be a child that imparts wisdom in ways that you never thought were possible. So, for those of you that are around little kids, have you ever met that kid that just says those really insightful things, just as part of the conversation without meaning to be insightful, without trying to be, anything more than a little kid just observing, right? That would be what I would call an old soul. Um, so this is a term that I resonate with. When I came to planet Earth from a young age, I always felt like an old soul. And I used to read about it when I was a little kid to be like, yes, the old souls get younger as they get older. And I could only hope because as an 8-year-old and 9-year-old, I was really responsible. I was not your typical kid. I mean, I did a lot of typical kid things. But I wasn't your typical kid. I could, help around the house. I could, cash out a customer at my parents' business, that kind of thing. That might be an exaggeration. I might have been 12 when they gave me that job. But, some of it was the generation I was raised in and how children were raised, but some of it was just me being an old soul, right? And I do have other kids in my family that have the same energy. But as an old soul that came to planet Earth, there are a lot of things that I remember from being a child that I didn't understand. Like I would just know things, right? I would understand things that grown-ups weren't actually saying. And some of that was, once again, because of the generation I grew up in, but some of that was old soul. One of the littles that I'm around these days is such an old soul that they do such a beautiful job expressing how their body feels at certain times, whether it's their brain or their tummies or whatever it is. Um, I've heard things like, well, when there is a lot of yelling going on, it makes, little pains in my head that bother me, explained as, they don't like the stress and the friction in a household where there's yelling or fighting, things like that. That's what that one does as far as doing that. Another thing that comes to mind is one of mine when they were real little. They were about 3 years old, 4 years old, and lectured a 30-year-old on the troubles with having a child. Um, and what that, would cost and blah, blah, blah. And some of it was things they had heard me say. However, most of it was just insights and things that they were able to understand without having it ever explained to them. So I guess that's one way of an old soul. It's kind of these children that know things. And yes, some are guided and directed by their family and friends, but others just know things, okay? Um, and this is no shade to my brother, but I came to planet Earth knowing that I would have a sister, and I was looking for my sister. And when I turned 4, my mom had a baby, and I prayed every day that I would get my sister because I knew I had a sister. And then my brother came home from the hospital with my mom, And I do love my brother deeply. But he wasn't the sister that I had prayed for, and I was kind of upset. And I just thought, I don't understand. I know I have a sister. Where is my sister? And then when I was about 9, 10 years old, the family secret came out that my mom did have a baby 2 years before I was born. She only lived for a couple days and she passed away. And she is my full sister. So I do have a sister. She just got here and left before I got here to planet Earth, which when I see her again, I am going to talk to her about that. But neither here nor there. I'm sure she's done a lot of tough things for me over the many lifetimes we have shared. So, old souls. Old souls need guidance and love. They need acceptance. They don't need a crowd, but they need to be accepted by their inner circle. You may not understand them if they're your child or grandchild or niece or nephew or godchild or brother or sister. You may not understand them, but as long as you're willing to love them and be a safe place for them too, they will always be in your corner. I can guarantee you that. Okay, so what else about old souls? Is your kid an old soul? Do you need help with this old soul? So, if I were to be given an old soul little infant today, I would try to help that soul to ground their energy first and foremost, to find the ways to reset their nervous system. They're not going to be an average child in most cases in how they process things. They may need more quiet time. They may release in different ways. That's the kind of mm, kink to it. You have to help them to discover the best ways for them because they already know it because they've done it for 100 lifetimes. Okay. So I know some of this may be out far out there for some of you to ponder on, but truly it is a topic that is not discussed much. And even when it's discussed, there's not a whole lot of resources. I was watching TikTok the other day and I saw this mom helping her child to own what was her energy and what was others' energy. And I think that if you do have a child that has an old soul or gifts that you're trying to help cultivate, it is important to give them the tools to feel safe. And then I just want to add one final comment with that is please remember you're not typically teaching these children. You're helping them to remember what they already know how to do. Okay. So they usually take less guidance in developing the practices and the habits that will support them. So. That is the conversation for this week. I hope it helps support you in some way, shape, or form. And if there is a particular old soul out there that would love some guidance and would like to connect with other old souls, let me know. And also, if you need any help with a little old soul that you're raising, reach out. I would love to chat with you about it. So, hope you have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to chatting again. Bye bye.